Very early on, Bleach introduces the dark underbelly of the Soul Society, exposing hidden agendas, political intrigue, and systematic flaws. We are given the impression and the idea that the Soul Society, and by extension the Shinigami, are not as morally and or ethically just as we might believe them to be. Some kill for fun with no consequence and are even given high-ranking positions of power, while others have tortured for their own ambition with no consequence. The supposed good guys of the Soul Society are definitely morally flawed, at least in our worldview. They were even called the protectors of the balance and not of justice, good, or truth. Each of us also has a different opinion on what we view as morally and or ethically just or unjust. What I deem to be morally sound, you might deem it to be morally corrupt. And that couldn't be more true in the morally gray world of Bleach when trying to decide who is truly evil and who is not. In this video, I wanted to pose the question, who is the most evil Shinigami? The premise for this video is going to be very similar to the Elite Guard candidate video. I will have these characters separated into 5 different tiers. We have the morally gray, the bad but redeemable, the bad and irredeemable, the simply evil, and the last tier is the evil incarnate. I will be taking into account personal ambition and if this person has grown over the years and lots of other reasons to determine if whether or not some of these guys are truly evil or just a little gray. I will also be looking at morals and ethics through not only with our worldviews but also through the world of Bleach. Killing is quite normalized because of how their world functions, and acts that are acceptable in Bleach would make you quite evil in the real world. Before we get into the video guys, please hit that subscribe button if you want more content like this, and I hope you guys enjoy. Starting off with the morally gray tier, we have the Zero Division member Senjumaru Shitara. Not much is known about her time before her promotion aside from her creating the Shuhakusho. But in a club outside question answered by Kubo, we're learned that Senjumaru used to lead a group of unofficial scientists in the Soul Society. Mayuri was also a part of this unofficial scientific research group, and it's actually the reason why I have Senjumaru in the morally gray tier. We don't know if she's done anything questionable, but we do know Mayuri studied and tortured thousands of Quincy's in the name of science. Now, whether or not Mayuri conducted his research while he was a part of this unofficial group is questionable, but definitely not out of the question. If his research was done while working under Senjumaru's leadership, I definitely think she deserves to be in the morally gray tier and possibly even higher. I also think that because this group of scientists wasn't an official group, it makes me question why that possibly was the case. Were they conducting terrible research and knew they wouldn't get approval? Or maybe it's even possible this group was denied, but I do think Senjumaru deserves to be here because it's possible Mayuri conducted his Quincy research while working under her. Next up in this tier is the current vice captain of the 12th Division, Icon. He's essentially here for the same reason as Senjumaru is, and that's due to Mayuri's experiments on the Quincy's. We don't know for sure if Icon was around during these experiments or if he was possibly even working under Senjumaru during the time of the research group. But Icon being so close to Mayuri, I think would know a lot of the terrible things Mayuri has done. Because of this, I don't quite think Icon is a bad guy, but I do think he can be considered morally gray or maybe higher. Up next in this tier, we have Soul Society Arc Byakuya. Now, this one was pretty interesting to decide upon, but in the end, I thought it was the right choice putting him on the list. Byakuya being in the morally gray tier really stems from him stubbornly holding up the law to the point where he would allow his adoptive sister, Rukia Kuchiki, to die from an unfair sentence. Now, Byakuya did struggle immensely between the oath he made to his parents about upholding the law and the promise he made to his late wife Hisana about protecting Rukia. If it wasn't for Ichigo changing Byakuya's mind, he without a doubt would have allowed their execution of Rukia to happen and maybe even would have executed her himself, since he did tell Ichigo in their final battle that Rukia was going to die by his hands. Letting his sister die because of a promise he made to his parents about upholding the law is definitely morally questionable in my opinion. I don't think this act is enough to make Soul Society Arc Byakuya in the bad but redeemable tier because even when we think Byakuya's mind is made up about letting Rukia die, we know later on he reveals he struggled with the decision heavily, even though he tried to act like he didn't care about the situation. So from the very moment he learns of Rukia's execution, he is fighting a battle within himself about the issue. So his act isn't necessarily evil, but it's definitely morally questionable and deserves him a spot on the list. The last one in this tier, we have Kisuke Urahara, and I have him here for his creation of the Hogyoku and some Can't Figure Your Own World novel information we got on him. So we don't know exactly how the Hogyoku is made, but we do have an idea on what it needs the most: souls. We know Aizen was feeding his Hogyoku the souls of Shinigami and Hollows, and even fed it some parts of the Soul King. Again, we don't know the other methods of creating the Hogyoku, but I think it would be disingenuous to think Kisuke somehow created his Hogyoku in this morally just way, knowing that it requires a crap ton of souls to satisfy it. Did Kisuke use the souls of innocent Shinigami and souls from the Rokkongai citizens like Aizen? We don't really know, and it's such a gray area on how Kisuke created his. Kisuke at some point did realize the Hogyoku was dangerous, and he even tried to destroy it because of this. But I think what slightly takes away from his good act of trying to destroy the Hogyoku is him turning Rukia into a human just so he could hide it. Something else that makes Kisuke morally questionable is some Can't Figure Your Own World novel information. Kisuke in the novels gets questioned as to why he created the Hogyoku, and he essentially says because he could. He even says that he is no different from Mayuri, which alludes to the fact that Kisuke would do anything and everything he needed to do for research if something truly interests him. He even tells Yoruichi to quote-unquote take care of him if he ever went down that dark path. Kisuke is morally great as hell, and I think you could maybe squeeze him into the bad but redeemable tier, but when compared to those people in that tier, I don't think Kisuke is all that bad, but the potential is clearly there. Starting off the next tier in the bad but redeemable tier, we have Kaname Tosen. He mostly is here because of his affiliation with Aizen and helping out with his evil plans. Tosen supported and followed Aizen with his plans of trying to make the Oken by killing 100,000 human souls. This doesn't include other horrible things Aizen has done, which would include mass murder and the experiments of humans, Shinigamis, and Hollows, which Tosen has also helped with doing. But why do I think Tosen can be considered redeemable? Tosen is quite the complex character, so much so that even the surface level readers have a hard time understanding his character. The unjust ways of the Soul Society is what really drove him to his extreme views on justice, which really isn't surprising considering how evil Central 46 can be. Kaname was driven over the edge because a woman he was really close to was murdered by her husband. This husband was Tokinata from the Can't Figure Your Own World novels. Tokinata killed her, and because he was a noble, he got a slap on the wrist. Kaname wanted to help Aizen to achieve his goals because he saw and experienced firsthand how morally unjust the Soul Society can be, and he wanted to change the ways of the world so that the horrible things that happened to his friend don't happen to other good people like her. This of course doesn't make what Kaname did and was trying to do a good thing. He went about all this the wrong way, and he did horrible things out of a sense of justice and trying to change the world. He wanted change and justice so badly that he was willing to kill an entire town for it. Revenge is what really drove him, I would say, but his intentions were never evil, just his acts. And he truly wanted peace and justice in the world, even though he went about it the wrong way. Even upon his death and his talk with Komomura, I think he finally realizes this. Horrible experiments, mass murder, and an attempted genocide. Kaname did horrible things, and though bad, I would say he is slightly redeemable. Next in this tier, I have Soya Azashiro from the Spirits Are Forever With You novels. Azashiro is mainly here due to his goals of wanting to lobotomize all humans and souls to prevent the existence of Hollows. Basically, he wanted to kill all Hollows and get rid of the emotions that lead humans to becoming Hollows. He hates Hollows, and it's because of what happened to his sister growing up. Azashiro is from a lesser noble family that was falsely accused by some other nobles. These other nobles locked a young Azashiro, his sister, and the rest of his family into a hollow pit where they were forced to fight and keep themselves from being killed. His family of course is killed, and right before his sister dies, she tells him to become a strong soul reaper, which I think helped spark Azashiro's goals. He unlocks his Zanpakuto immediately after and then slaughters the Hollows and the laughing nobles who falsely accused his family. Along the way of trying to achieve his goal, he fought and hurt so many Shinigami that the Zero Division actually had to step down to stop him. Trying to lobotomize all humans and souls against their will I think is pretty bad, especially trying to kill all hollows, which would destroy the balance. But I don't think Asashiro is evil, and I don't think we are meant to believe that either. Similar to Kaname, he is misguided and a victim of the evil and unjust ways of the Soul Society. His story also ends with him deciding to reflect on his actions for a couple of centuries, so I think him being in the bad but redeemable tier is fair. Oh man, I struggled badly with the last person in this tier, seriously. I didn't know where to place him, but I placed him here in the bad but slightly, and I do mean slightly redeemable, which I will have to explain. But the last person in the bad but redeemable tier is Ichibei. Good and evil are matters of perspective, and I feel like that couldn't be more true when talking about the morally gray king himself, Ichibei. It's implied Ichibei has been alive for at least 1,000,000 years now, and since then, he has been watching over and protecting the three realms in his own way. So the first morally questionable thing I want to talk about is Ichibei allowing the OG noble families to cut up Ryo. Now this could be due to a couple different things. We know it's implied that Ryo allowed himself to be cut up and sealed. Why he did, we really don't know, but the most talked about theory is that he could see the future and that's why he didn't resist. Ichibei not stepping in could be due to his clairvoyance like the Ryo, or maybe he wasn't strong enough to stop the five noble ancestors at that time, since they are known as special and powerful beings that came into the world just like the Ryo and Ichibei, who the latter holds their abilities in high regard. Now, Ichibei not stepping in to help the Ryo isn't the biggest reason I have him here, or really the biggest reason people think he is morally gray or just straight up evil. It's mostly because he was going to force Ichigo to become the new Soul King if things went south in Thousand Year Blood War. We learn this information from the Can't Fear Your Own World novels when Ichibei is talking with Shunsui. This atrocity Ichibei was going to do if things went bad in Thousand Year Blood War has sparked a lot of different debates and perspectives on whether or not Ichibei was morally right or wrong. As I've said earlier, good and evil are matters of perspective, and while I do think what Ichibei was going to do to Ichigo can be considered evil, at least in our worldview, I do think it was a necessary evil. I think this really does come down to the question of if you think one life is worth billions of others. Ichibei's sole duty for millions of years has been to protect the balance. If he failed to do that, it would destroy the lives of billions. So again, you would have to ask the question, is it really evil to do what it takes to prevent that? Is one life comparable to the destruction of the three worlds? I have seen some people come up with the possibility of Ichigo becoming the new Soul King, while also being allowed to live his life like normal. But I totally get why Ichibei wouldn't trust anyone with that much power and responsibility, especially if they decided to revolt against the Soul Society. I do still think it's evil to force anyone against their will, especially someone like Ichigo who has saved the Soul Society multiple times. Though Shunsui does hint at the fact that Ichigo would probably agree to become the linchpin if it came down to it. So to sum everything up with Ichibei, I do think he is redeemable because he isn't doing any of his evil acts because of selfish reasons or self-gain. He is doing it to maintain the balance of the worlds. I do see his perspective, and at the end of the day, he can't just let everything crumble and fall apart due to one life, regardless of how much that one life has helped his side. He doesn't kill for fun, and he does and has done everything for a good reason. You can call him immoral, but at the end of the day, his actions are what maintain some level of peace and stability. But let me know what you guys think about this placement because I'm pretty sure it's going to be the biggest topic of discussion in the comments. On to the next tier. In the bad and irredeemable tier, we have the two famous Kenpachis, Unohana Yachiru and Kenpachi Zaraki. Now, it's pretty obvious why these two are here. They both used to kill and murder hundreds or even thousands for fun. Unohana was known as the most notorious criminal in the Soul Society, and depending on how you use the word notorious next to the word criminal, you could ponder this to her also being the most evil criminal at that time. To be honest, murdering hundreds or maybe even possibly thousands of Rakongai citizens for fun is quite evil to me. The same applies to Kenpachi since even as a child, he found immense pleasure in slaughtering people. Upon first meeting each other, Kenpachi was standing upon possibly hundreds of Rakongai citizens he just slaughtered. And before this, Unohana's vice captain at the time, I assume, thought that Unohana was the one who killed and left that mountain of corpses there. So even her vice captain wasn't really surprised and thought she had done that deed because of how unsatisfied she was. He even figures out Unohana's real purpose in going to the Rakongai, and it was to find someone worthy to kill. Her vice captain even implies she referred to them as Vandals as an excuse to carry out whatever act she wanted to, or at least that's kind of how I interpreted his conversation with her. Both Kenpachi and Unohana loved fighting and killing so much and were addicted to it almost like a drug. The only reason I don't have both of them in the next tier of simply evil is due to them both becoming more civilized and not as wild of barbarians as they used to be. Unohana even went into retirement from fighting after her fight with Kid Kenpachi, and she did a complete 180 and became this mother-like figure in the Soul Society whose only purpose was to heal and not fight. Kenpachi, although still a barbarian, has also become more civilized and has even picked up some morals. If Kenpachi and Unohana had stayed the same and didn't change, then I definitely would have them in the next tier. Up next in this tier, I have Genrisa Yamamoto. I only really have him here due to Yu-Ha's observation of Yamamoto in the past. He refers to Yamamoto in the first generation Gote 13 as a group of cold-blooded killers who were court guards in name only. He goes on to say that Yamamoto used anything and everything to slay an enemy, and the lives of his men weighed only as much as ash to him. Yu-Ha makes it clear that Yamamoto was a pretty bad guy, but I do think you can argue Yamamoto should be in the bad but redeemable tier since he changed from the monster who he once was. It's also not stated that Yamamoto was a killer for fun like Unohana, for example. He was a killer that would do anything to protect the Soul Society is what I think is implied. We don't have much information on Yamamoto from the past other than Yu-Ha's thoughts on him, but if someone as ruthless as Yu-Ha thinks Yamamoto was this cold-hearted killer who didn't even care about the lives of his own men, then I think Yama being in the bad and irredeemable tier is somewhat fair. So this one might surprise most, but the last one in the bad and irredeemable tier is Gin Ichimaru. So I don't understand why most people think Kubo portrays Gin as this good guy whose entire goal was to stop Aizen only because Aizen was evil. Just like with Kaname and Komomura, Kubo shows us the downside of revenge and how it's a mistake that leads to a cold and dark path. Gin's entire quest for revenge was to kill Aizen because he took a part of Rangiku's soul, not because Aizen was evil. Just like with Kaname, revenge was so important to Gin that he didn't care about the Soul Society or the people he hurt or tortured along the way. I think Gin's goals started out good, but over time, his morality changed and he became the exact thing he was trying to kill. I think what kinda sucks is that Rangiku probably would have never wanted Gin to take revenge for her. I'm sure she would have been satisfied if Gin stayed with her, but it's totally possible Gin felt guilty for not being there to protect her. Nonetheless, I think it's different from Kaname, who, yes, was also driven by revenge, but was doing everything he did in order to change things. Kaname was also manipulated by the evil and unjust ways of the Soul Society and Tokinata because of his evil act. Yes, Gin could have killed Ichigo at any point, and he probably was testing him to see if he had what it took to take down Aizen. So he didn't see Ichigo as an enemy, but I just think the way Gin went about everything with Aizen was wrong. Especially since he should have been someone who was in a better state of mind than Kaname since he wasn't manipulated by the Soul Society. For hundreds of years, he stayed with Aizen experimenting on hundreds or possibly even thousands of Shinigami and Rakongai citizens just to gain his trust. Not once in his selfish plan of trying to kill Aizen did he think that maybe he should warn the Soul Society in some type of way about what Aizen was trying to do. This is my biggest issue in reasoning as to why I don't think Gin is that redeemable. Not only are his acts selfish, but he doesn't try in any way to warn anyone in the Soul Society about Aizen. The progress the Soul Society could have made if Gin was cooperating with them is insane, and they possibly could have even stopped Aizen before things got too bad, and they even needed the help from an outsider. It's possible Gin lost his way along his quest of trying to kill Aizen, and that's how he became just as bad as the guy he was trying to kill. I don't know, to be honest, Gin's entire goal and how I feel about it can be its own video, but I really do dislike when people compare him to Itachi from Naruto, because although while similar, they are very different situations. But let me know what you guys think about Gin's placement in the bad and irredeemable tier. Am I being too hard on him and not Kaname, and do you guys think he should be here or in the bad but redeemable tier? I'm pretty open on topics like this, but from my understanding of Gin, I think he should be here in this tier. On to the next tier, we have Simply Evil, and Sasuke Aizen is the one starting out this tier. Honestly, I don't even know where to start with Aizen. Treason, mass murder, attempted genocide, experimentation, conspiracy, terrorism, torture, kidnapping, vandalism, and probably lots more. Just like with Kaname, I think Aizen's reasoning of hating the Soul Society's corrupt system is valid, but the goals he set in order to change things were straight up evil. Aizen's biggest plan was to kill about 100,000 Karakura town citizens in order to create the Oken using their souls. Along the way of trying to achieve this goal, Aizen has also experimented and tortured hundreds of Shinigami and Rokongai citizens in order to feed their souls to the Hogyoku. And this isn't counting the numerous other experiments he did for holification. He tampered with the souls of a bunch of captains and vice captains, turning them into hollows that would have died if it wasn't for Kisuke saving them. He assassinated Central 46, even though these guys are not good people, and now that I'm thinking about it, I probably could have put them on the list. He also killed Momo twice, who literally worshipped the ground he stood on. I don't think most people would deny that Aizen is evil, but there are a few from my experience who think otherwise, which is crazy. But I think this shows just how much of a Chad that Aizen is, since he's convinced so many people that he isn't evil. Surprisingly, I don't have much more to explain why Aizen is evil, and I think most people would agree he deserves to be in this Simply Evil tier. Oh, Mayuri, the last one in the Simply Evil tier. As most of you guys know, Mayuri is my favorite character in the story, but let me say that if Kubo didn't do his soft reset on Mayuri's character, then he might not have been my favorite character, and he would without a doubt be in the next tier. Soul Society Arc Mayuri is a menace, and while most people think he is pretty evil, Soul Society Arc Mayuri has used his own soldiers as bait and blew them up, and he has also brutally beat up his daughter Nimue. He experimented and tortured thousands of Quincy's in the name of science, and he flat out says and brags that he has drilled holes into their head while they were still alive and even made them burn their own children. Crimes against children are the worst types of crimes for me, and it's immoral. But Mayuri was surprisingly pretty popular around this time and was Kubo's favorite. So I think Kubo toned Mayuri down a bit and did a soft reset on Mayuri's character and changed him from his sadistic, child torturing, and evil villain ways to a less sadistic comedic anti-hero, still maintaining his sadistic and ruthless nature that would probably do anything for science if it interested him. After the Soul Society arc, the worst thing Mayuri has done is that he killed 28,000 Rokongai citizens in order to correct the soul balance. Now, if I'm being completely honest, I personally don't even think this act is that bad for a couple different reasons. Mayuri didn't kill those Rokongai citizens for science or selfish reasons. He did it in order to protect the soul balance. From the very beginning, we are told about the balance of the three worlds and what it takes to not only maintain that balance, but to also disrupt that balance, which is the eradication of souls. During the first chapter of Thousand Year Blood War, we see firsthand that the balance is on the threat of tipping because the Quincy's were purposely destroying hollows by the masses. This mass eradication of souls got so bad that Mayuri decided to eradicate 28,000 Rokongai citizens in order to correct that balance. This kind of poses the same question with Ichibei. Yeah, it sucks those souls had to be eradicated, but what's their life worth when compared to billions? I actually had some debates and arguments about this topic in my Discord, and I was even called evil and tyrannical for agreeing with Mayuri's methods to save the world and keep it from falling apart. But as I've said before, and as the manga has shown us, the only way to fix or disrupt the balance is the mass killing of souls. So it would be a little silly to think a more ethical way could have been used or less deaths could have occurred. I know this is supposed to be talking about all the bad things Mayuri has done, but I had to talk and defend this because I know someone is going to bring up that Mayuri killed 28,000 Rokongai citizens, even though it was for the protection of the balance. Other than that, Mayuri still does continue his research on things, but we don't know the severity of it. In the Can't Fear Your Own World novels, he does experiment on Candace and a bunch of other Quincy's, but I think it's theorized that he treated Candace better than the Quincy's he did in the past, and I think he says something about his experiments on them were pointlessly cruel and he realizes what he's done. He still does other crazy stuff like infecting people with a surveillance bacteria, and I think he also wanted to experiment on the Fullbringers, which couldn't be good. But nothing Mayuri did in Thousand Year Blood War will compare to the evilness that he was in the Soul Society arc. Evil Incarnate is the last tier, and Tokinata Tsuneyashiro has the honor of sharing this tier all to himself. Being the head of the most powerful noble family with the most influence, Tokinata probably is the one character in the series that can do whatever he wants without consequence. He is the one who killed his own wife, who also happened to be Kaname's best friend. He of course got no punishment, which sent Kaname down a dark path. He murdered all of Ginjo's Fullbringer friends and blamed it on Ukitake, which also led Ginjo on a path of revenge. He's also killed his entire bloodline so that he could become the new head of the family, and even thought of multiple ways of torturing Shuhei Hisagi. He's killed Rokongai citizens just cause he could, and has even broken every bone in someone's body before stabbing them to death. But why does he do all of this, and what's his goal? He straight up says that he does all the horrible things that he does because he can, and knows that he can get away with it because of his status. He also wanted every human in the real world to know about the Soul Society and the afterlife. He wanted to see human nature at its finest, and if everyone would succumb to evil, knowing that whatever they do, no matter how cruel or evil, they can be saved and still go to the afterlife. I think what makes him even more terrifying is that Tokinata understands that he is wrong and that he's evil. He even views himself as the karma of the Soul Society, and that every evil and every sin committed in Soul Society's past was sure to give birth to someone like Tokinata. I think there is a statement that I haven't been able to find yet, but Yoruichi even makes the statement that she prefers the evilness of Aizen when compared to Tokinata, which is saying a lot. What kind of solidifies everything is that Tokinata says that if he didn't have his current plan of exposing the Soul Society to the real world, he would just find another way to be evil. This guy literally just wants to be a menace. I don't have a lot more to say about Tokinata, and I'm pretty sure that most people would agree that he is the most evil Shinigami that just wants to see the world burn. But let me know what you guys thought about the video. Do you agree with the list of the most evil Shinigami? Did I miss someone, and would you have moved someone in a different tier? Don't forget to subscribe if you want more content like this. Join the Discord linked in the description below, and till next time.